50 years. Good morning. It is a Tuesday morning. It is August 13th, and the date includes the year 2019, in case you're listening to this after the aliens land. What am I going to talk about today? Well, not much. I've got a guest in here that has a lot to say. He's been my guest on more than one occasion, probably on more than 5 occasions over the last 10 years. He has recently completed a book, and more exciting to me right now is his trip to India and other places around the world. And Peter, I want to say welcome to the Wayne Eddy Affair.
Thanks a lot, Wayne. Hello, everybody.
It's been a while. I haven't seen you for about a year, I think.
About a year. Usually I'm here every year.
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. I know you have a book coming out. And the story I like more than any other is a story about running into something in the jungle somewhere that you stared down. Can you tell that story again?
I think that was Daniel Boone you're talking about.
No. It was you. And further, you know, a lot of people haven't heard that story that are listening, tuned in now. So I just love that story. Do you want to repeat it for me, please?
Sure, of course. Okay. You know, I love stories, Wayne. So, and that also has something to do with my book about extraterrestrials. But first, I'll tell you that I traveled a lot. You know, I spent 7 years in Central and South America traveling. I spent 3 years in Africa traveling. And I spent 4 years in Europe and 7 years in Asia. I backpacked from Canada to Paraguay, from Copenhagen to Cameroon, in the Congo, up the Congo River to Burkina Faso, to Mali, Timbuktu, cross the Pan-Sahara Desert, 52 days for $20 to Tantan, Morocco, and across the top, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt, from Turkey to Burma, around to California, through the Philippines, and so on. So that took a long time, and I did a lot of studies.
Is your theme song from the Beach Boys, Round, 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 I Get Around?
I remember that song,
okay.
Right?
I know you want to talk about that book, and
okay,
I want you to talk about that, and we have 2 hours to do that, but yeah. I don't know if these gentlemen in studio with us, Daniel, let me see if I can find you over here on the mic. Daniel, what's your last name?
Lefebvre.
Lefebvre?
That's right, Lefebvre.
Lefebvre, all right, I like that. And then you have a cameraman here, he's videotaping.
Yes,
okay.
He works for Google.
He works for Google. Mr. Google, please be sure you get this right here, the 95.1 FM in that film. That's awfully important. I'm in marketing, as you can tell. There he goes. Oh, you got one of those GoPros. That's cool.
This will be the Osmo.
Yeah, and then you're going to edit that. All right.
That's right.
This is kind of exciting. Daniel, we're going to let him finish that story. I don't know if he's told it to you yet, but this is somewhere...
This is in Nepal.
Okay.
And this happened in 1973. And that is that in that time I was married to a Russian Jewish girl. Her name was Vukadinovich. And she and I were climbing up the tall staircase to Swayambhu Monkey Temple in Nepal. And Nepal had just opened in 73 to the world. They'd been closed. I think before that they hadn't been open at all. And at the top of the monastery, you know, I had been carrying my camera around the world with me. In those days, not many people had a 35 millimeter they carried around. But I had mine in my backpack. And on the way up to Swayambhu, there were a lot of monkeys there. And I was in very good shape in those days. I was 28 years old, and I was going up I was excited to get to the top of this temple.
You were just out of Vietnam, weren't you, at that time?
I got out of Vietnam when I was, I was 21. Okay. And then I spent 4 years in college and then began traveling. And since then I got my MA and my PhD. But at this time, I only had a bachelor's degree, and I was 20. I turned 28 in Turkey, so I was still 28 years old. I was in good shape, so I'm going up the stairs a little too fast for the girl, and behind me, I heard her scream. I turned around, and a fairly large monkey had her by the wrist and another on her purse. And I don't like to hurt animals. I don't hunt animals. The only hunting I ever did was in Vietnam. And so I jumped down the other couple of staircases, and I kicked that monkey in the chest so hard that it would have killed a man. I'm sure it would have collapsed his lungs. But I never fought a monkey before, you know? And it just flipped over in the air down a couple of staircases, and he just landed on his feet, and he was growling at me. And I knew that he never fought a human being before, because when he looked up at me, he only looked up about as far as my waist, then up to my shoulders, then up to my eyes. And so I had a K-bar with me, which is a knife that they don't use anymore in the Marines, but it's like a giant razor blade, and every time you put it back in the scabbard it gets sharper. I didn't want to hurt this monkey, but I thought, what the hell, you know, I mean, if he's going to attack my woman, and you know, I'm going to defend myself. So okay, so I pull out the knife, and I get in a stance that if I am attacked, my plan is to kill the thing, you know. So, and he just keeps growling at me and staring at me. I asked the girl, I said, why did he attack you? I mean, he's not attacking me. And she said, maybe he's after the peanuts. I said, what peanuts? She said, well, she had emptied her purse on her little bed in this place that we were staying in, this little wooden hotel with a couple of rooms. And she filled it up with a kilo of peanuts. And I said, Jesus, this is not the zoo, you know. This is the jungle. So I said, she's standing behind me. So I said, come to my side and open the purse. So she opens her purse. I put my hand in the purse, and I felt all these peanuts. And I held them out like this. And that was the first time the monkey looked away from me. I said, hey, is this what this is all about? And so I took the peanuts, and I threw them over his head about maybe a foot. And his eyes started going back. Eventually he turned around, and he went back picking up peanuts, and there were like maybe 50 monkeys smaller than this one on either side of the wall. There's stone walls going up the stairs. So I told the girl, back up, just back up, keep going. And she backed up, and I said, turn around and keep walking. And I backed up several staircases, and then I walked up to the monastery. So, you know, so I lectured her about, you know, bringing any kind of food for animals when we're in a jungle. So then I looked out the back of the temple, and there was a wide opening in a field and surrounded by jungle. And I thought, it was a long way up. It was very mountainous. And I thought, hey, there's a level field out there. And I thought, let's go out there and take a little walk, you know. And I mean, the monks are not going to steal my camera or my pack. So I left my camera and my pack in the temple, and I walked down a couple of staircases, and to the right there's a little path that goes back to the opening in the field. And it's a field about as big as a professional baseball field. So, and I heard something running along along the perimeter of the jungle, and it was moving very fast. And there seemed like there was more than one. I thought that perhaps they were tigers, but they couldn't be after me or my woman because they were moving too fast. So I thought, okay, if they're tigers, they're going after something else. And maybe they thought that I was a monk. The monks have been living there for years. So they were kicked out of Tibet in '57. So a little while later, I were walking a little bit, and out of the end of the jungle jumps this big thing. It was like a man-type monkey. They call them, in Asia, they call them alamas. It's like part man, part monkey. But these are descendants of what the extraterrestrials had left behind, which was my book about, which is these extraterrestrials took over this planet for over 300 million years. When they first came, there was only water here, and they built cities in space. I thought at first they were talking about space stations, but they had anti-gravity, and so of course the United States has had anti-gravity since 1954. The government, the hidden government, has their technology is 500 years from where we are now. But nevertheless, okay, so this thing jumps out, and it's about 5'4". At that time I was 5'7.5". Now I'm 5'6", 74.
I understand that.
Okay, so and this thing was black. This thing was black, and it stands there growling at me, and it was like a man, except that it had the fur, black fur on its body was really close to its body, like a Doberman Pinscher. And then out walked on one side another one that was blonde, but very different. Very different. It was hunched a little bit, and it had shaggy blonde hair, like fringe on those old coats that we used to wear in Minnesota, like a fringe coat. And then one walked out on its other side, and then another one walked out on the other side, and then another one walked out. So now there were 5. And the black one is just standing there growling at me, and I thought, what the hell is this, I mean, I didn't run or anything. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then they ran toward me. And I thought, if these are animals, maybe I can scare them away or something, So I told the girl to get behind me, like we did with the other monkey, but that monkey was like a regular monkey. And these things ran up to me, and I stood there, and this black one was growling in my face. I mean, there was maybe a quarter of an inch difference. We were breathing the same breath, and its breath, when I was interviewed about this incident by Michael Cremo, who wrote Forbidden Archaeology, his book was famous, but he had never seen any of these things. Archaeologists say they haven't been alive for 60 million years, but and when I was interviewed, he said, okay, it was in your face and you were breathing the same breath? I said, yeah. He said, so did he have bad breath? I said, no. I said, I was shocked that his breath was not bad, but it was hot, probably from running the way you was running, And the other 4, I really hardly looked at, because this one was in my face, literally, like a drill instructor at Parris Island, South Carolina. And he was showing me his, he had his hand in my face, up in my face, with what I thought were large claws. And I said that they were nails, because what I knew, it was only no fingernails. And he said, well, they don't have fingernails. I said, listen, I don't know anything about these creatures. I only know what I saw, okay? He said, well, what does its feet look like? I said, listen, you ever been in a fight, a fist fight or something? He said, no. I said, you never look at their feet. I was looking at this thing's eyes, okay? I don't know what the hell the feet look like. But I know what the nails looked like, but they weren't nails. They were talons, like an eagle, only they weren't curved. He said, were they curved or were they straight? I said, they were straight, and they were serrated, the edges, so it could rip you apart. And he had those claws only a fraction of an inch from my face. But I just kept looking into its eyes. I thought that if this thing was going to kill me, it would have already done it. That was my hope. And the other 4, 2 on each side of me, just stood there. I could see them a bit with peripheral vision, but I knew that I would be easily overpowered by these things. So we were like this for maybe 10, 15 minutes, felt like a million years. And I kept looking up to the monastery, thinking that I was hoping that I could see a monk, maybe or two, and they could see what was happening and come down and help me. Or I thought maybe they could interact with these things and to get them off my back, so to speak. But there was no one up there, like a cop. There's never a cop around when you want one. So then it took a new tact, this thing, and it walked away from me for about 10 feet. Walked away, then turned around slowly, looked back at me, and then ran up to me again, and this whole thing began again. And then this happened a number of times, maybe 5, 6 times, and each time he would walk away further and then run back faster. And after about a half an hour, it felt like a million years. Maybe it wasn't half an hour, maybe it was only 20, 25 minutes, but it was a long time. And finally I was starting to lose my composure. I was thinking that I'm going to get an anxiety attack here, because I could feel that my nervous system was working overtime, and I was going to start shaking pretty soon. And perhaps this thing picked it up, and all he wanted to do was terrify me. And I felt confident that it was because this monkey that I kicked ran back in the jungle somewhere and told these things what happened in its own way. And these things were like men, and they would come and harass me, So, and with an overpowering, one of them, perhaps, I would have fought the thing if it was only one and I had no alternative. If it attacked me, we'd probably both die. But 5, it's impossible. So, and when I started finally losing my composure, but I could feel that I was going to start shaking, so it walked back farther and then toward the jungle from where I came in, and then turned around quickly and stared at me through the brush. I could feel his eyes like laser beams. And then it was trying to put across to me, I believe, don't screw around with the monkeys, okay? Don't harass the monkeys. I didn't really, I didn't start it. I'm sure the monkey didn't tell him that part, And then they left, and then I went up to the temple. None of those monks could speak English. And when I finally came back down, I was kind of afraid to go back down that large staircase, that long staircase to Swayambhu. But I went back down, and I've never been back to Swayambhu since.
What happened to the woman, the girl, the wife? Briefly.
Sarah, I was being interviewed by Sasquatch people. This guy named Kiwani, who put me in a book, who was a friend of Michael Kreml, who wrote Forbidden Archaeology. And he said, Pete, did you have a camera to take any pictures? I said, hell no. I said, I left my camera, but even then, if I had my camera, I was probably too nervous to take a picture. So he said, well, there was a witness. I said, yeah. I said, my wife, Sarah. So I hadn't seen Sarah in years. We were divorced after we just separated, and we got a divorce. She wanted to do different things. I wanted to travel around the world. She wanted to be a school teacher. So I said, we don't have any kids. I said, why don't you go do that? And that's what she did. And I went my way. So I found her, called her, and she couldn't remember what happened. At least that's what she said. She couldn't remember. So I said, are you sure? I didn't want to harass her, So I had to call Kiwani and tell him, I said, listen, my witness doesn't remember anything. And he said, that's not unusual when people are terrified.
Well, that's a story that you've told, I think, like maybe the 3rd time here on the Wayne Eddy affair. And I love that story. And I think the first couple of times I kind of teased you like, yeah, you're seeing things. And this time I'm just listening. And you have a new book out, and we'll talk about that. But I have to talk about a place called the Quarterback Club right here in Northfield, Minnesota. The home of roasted chicken. Man, that chicken is so good, it's unbelievable. But they serve breakfast till 10 o'clock every morning, Monday through Saturday. And that means you have about 38 minutes to get over to the QB, get a cup of coffee, a donut, maybe some oatmeal, multi-meal, bacon and eggs, ham and eggs, sausage and eggs, or perhaps you'd like a strawberry waffle. Whatever you want, they've got it at the Quarterback Club, located on Highway 3 and 3rd Street in Northfield, locally owned and locally managed, the QB.
Ever make, and you want to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Okay, you take the lead now.
I not only offer homeowners.
I just wanted to hear that story again,
but I can help
compared to the other two
no
times.
More homeowners trust State Farm than
You
any
did
other
good.
insurance
You did
company.
good.
For information, call me, State Farm agent.
Daniel, how do you spell your last name?
Providing insurance and
L-
financial services. Loans are offered through State Farm.
L-A-
Member FDIC.
F-
A
A
V is in Victor.
V
E.
E T.
Isn't it just
I'm out of here.
E? Just E.
Just say it. I'll do it phonetically in my head. Say your name loud.
La Fave.
LaFave. Well, what's so hard about that?
Mall of America.
He just can't.
I can't speak that well.
And sea rides and attractions. Then we can go to Sea Life and explore the 300-foot tunnel and check out giant sharks, sea turtles, and crocodiles. After that, we'll
What is your name?
I'm
Mark.
Mark what?
Holdridge, H-O-L-D.
H-O-L-D. V
D is in David.
D.
Yeah. And then R-I, like Ridge, R-I-D-G-E.
Okay.
Mark Holdridge.
Mark. Yep. Good looking guy, by the way.
Oh, stop.
Are you a movie guy?
Melted wax spin art and color our
Why
faces
not?
with their silly selfies.
I'm on this side of the camera.
We'll stay at
You're almost
Radisson
good looking
Blue
as
Mall of
Jeff
America,
Johnson.
conveniently
Hey, Jeff Johnson.
connected to the mall. It's summer of play at Mall of America. Visit mallamerica.com for details.
We're back live in color on the Wayne Eddy Affair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to 1080 AM and, of course, 95.1 FM. The one. 9:25 is the time. My guest this morning is Pete Meile, and he has a friend with him named Daniel LaFave, and this is being videographed, or whatever the word is, by a guy named Mark Holdridge. We'll find out what it's all about, but right now I'm going to go back to my guest, Pete, and what I've been asking you to come on in because I've been getting postcards from around the world from you, and very fascinating. I don't know if I ever would want to do the trips that you have done. Seems to me there's a lot of hardship involved and a lot of stink and a lot of potential fear, and I don't know. You've gone places, and I've gotten the postcards that maybe take 5 weeks to get to me, but I get them, and I wanted to find out all about where you've been the last year or so. And then, of course, you have this new book that has come out, and I know you want to talk about that, and we certainly can. So what I'm going to do is the opposite. I'm going to throw it out to you. What do you want to talk about?
I'd like to talk about this new book I have.
All right, let's do it.
I have a number of books out, of course. You know, I worked with the guys in Star Trek for years and so on. But this is not fiction. This is what happened here on this planet. When this particular alien group that became the gods of India first came here, there was no land above water. And they stayed here for over 300 million years. And their exploits and adventures were taken down in a history called the Vedas, Veda, and it was broken up in 4 sections by another extraterrestrial, which NASA and Google call superhumans, because they were very advanced compared to where we are now. Millions of years advanced. And they talk about the exploits that they did here and things that they could do that we couldn't even imagine. For example, we know now what cloning is. So they were able to clone, for example, 3 creatures from 3 different dimensions, then 3 creatures from 3 other dimensions, bring them into this dimension, the 3rd dimension, give them each three-dimensional sex organs, have them mate, and bring out all kinds of creatures that they needed to use to do mining, to do building flying saucers and other kinds of vehicles that they needed. They had anti-gravity, and they used anti-gravity to, before there was land here, they built cities in space, and they would go back and forth from here to space, and in the water, under the water. A couple even rode dinosaurs, and there are carvings of that which are in my book. And in rare places in India, which I'm not going to mention those places, but in rare places there are statues.
Why won't you mention them?
Well, because when I went there, I was followed. I'd been in India many times, and I know India pretty well, but I had never been followed by secret police before in India. And in these places where they have statues, some statues of the creatures that the extraterrestrials made from different dimensions and brought in here, and creatures that they had left behind, like these creatures that I just talked about.
What did you call them? Ada, or what did you call them? What was
this particular alien group, or what?
Yeah, Nada, or you said
Alma. The Almas?
Oh, okay.
Now, Alma is Sanskrit, and it just means forest people, because they made all kinds of creatures to help them do things. Like, for example, they made these Alma, and there were different types. Like, for example, the one that was like a man, but his body had black hair like a Doberman Pinscher. Its head was the head of a monkey. It was a head of a monkey, but it was small, where it didn't fit. It didn't seem like it fit the rest of the body. And I spent time in Egypt and in Africa, and many archaeologists say that they think that the head of the Sphinx doesn't fit the Sphinx because it's a different head, that the original head was gone, and some say that because of the wind and the sand, it had cut the head down over the period of years. But what I think is that they made all these kinds of creatures and they put them together. It is possible that that is the creature, only its head is smaller than the rest of the body because they put these things together just to do their bidding for them. They didn't make them anatomically correct for the bodies that they were making. They only made them for what they needed.
You know what I've always wondered, Pete? When I'm being taught by people that are in the know, and they'll say, well, this was 312 million years ago. This was 1 billion, and these numbers, where do you come up with those? I mean, you don't have a laboratory where you're testing dirt or rocks or stones or bones or anything, do you? I mean, how do you come up with the numbers?
From the archives of what they left behind, when they say there was no land above the water, you figure about, we know about how long ago that was. And we know when they left because that was written down in Sanskrit, which the aliens developed. Let me tell the folks the name of the book so that they can pull it up on Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's on Google also, but it's easiest to get on Amazon right now.
Well, what about the Google guy over here? Doesn't he feel bad now?
Yeah.
Well, you can get it. You can get it in digital on Google Play. Okay? And you can get it in digital also on Amazon, but you can get it also in paperback. Okay, and it's called Aliens and the Multi-Paradox of Reality, and that is by me, Peter. The middle initial is J, and the last name is Meile, M-I-E-L-E, Peter J. Meile. And if you put that in Google, either Google or Amazon Books, you're going to find this book, and it is the best thing about what happened here. in the first 300 million years of civilization on this planet.
So you traveled around the world. You've been to all kinds of places that have weird things that happen. Some are proven, some are gesticulation, I would assume, by the natives. So you've been doing this for 3 decades,
50 years.
five decades. So you believe in flying saucers and aliens and all that. Do you ever tie that in with like the Mayan population of thousands of years ago? And
Of course, Mayan is Sanskrit. Mayan is a Sanskrit word, and it means illusion. These were the first characters here. You'll see that some of the names of people, even in the United States, like Janaki, Janaka, these are Sanskrit names. These were ancient so-called kings that were descendants of these extraterrestrials. There was, if there were any extraterrestrials that came before them, they didn't leave much behind, because I couldn't find in all of my studies anything that anyone else had left behind, any creatures left behind. But these characters, they built mermaids, they built mermen, they built lots of kinds of creatures that are now considered to be just fables. But if you read the Sanskrit Veda history, which many cultures have tried to destroy, England, the Muslims, they went out of their way so many times to destroy everything and put up their own religions or whatever they believed in, because these guys said that they would be back in 5 days. But the difference between where their planet is in the 6th dimension of Capricorn and here, those 5 days are 472,000 years. And in Brahma's planet, which is in the same dimension, 1/2 hour is approximately 150 million years here.
so have you collaborated with anybody that has a doctorate degree in science and outer space and all this, or are you just thinking this up? I mean, how do you know 426,000 years or whatever you just said? And Pete, you know that I enjoy talking to you, and I'll ask you questions that
Sure,
you know.
of course, Wayne. That's what it's all about, asking these questions. And
I hope that there's something out there that's friendly. I think that would be fantastic.
Well, there's some really wonderfully marvelous things that they said and they did. For example, they said there are. NASA says they don't know the distance of the universe, how big the universe is, but they know this, that when the extraterrestrials said they know the difference, the distance between Earth and the Moon, between Earth and Mars and the other planets here, they know that that's correct, They had wars on this planet between the Atlantis Empire and the Rama Empire, where there were nuclear wars on the Earth, and at that time the Moon, our Moon, belonged to Atlantis, and on the Moon. And the wars took place on all of the planets in our solar system, so they were all mapped out by the extraterrestrials. But they mapped out all of the planets in the 3rd dimension in the entire universe and gave the distance from one end of the universe to the other. And they mapped out 62 dimensions of planets in this universe, and at the time that they had left, they were working on the 63rd and the 64th dimension. And they said that there were more universes. They didn't know how many universes there were, but there were more universes, they thought, than there were grains of sand on this planet. They had never been outside of this universe, but they were able to contact nearby universes. And they said that when this universe was created, the reason why you could go into the future and into the past was just like being in the present, because it was all created at one time. So they could go back and forth in time, they could do lots of things. And this book is only 185 pages, but it's got a tremendous amount of information in it. And if anyone were interested in extraterrestrials or what happened here when we first got here.
I was just thinking, if you ever watched any host have guests on their show, you know, like in the old days, let's say Johnny Carson and all that, did you notice that every guest, no matter what, every guest is pushing something? A book, a record, a movie, and they show it and they say, you know, so-and-so's here. Oh, isn't the host a great guy? He gets this person on the air. And they're pumping their information about something that people should buy or go to. So this particular book, a beautiful cover, by the way, very, very colorful. I want to come back after I take a break, and I want to get to know this guy over here to my right by the name of Daniel Lefebvre and find out what dimension he's in regards to your relationship, all right? Okay. All right. Did you want to say something before I take the break?
The reason I brought Danny along with me was because Dan put this book together, got it out for me, and he read it twice because he was interested. This book is not easy to read. You have to not only have a brain, but you have to be able to use it.
And we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a flash on KYMN.
Social worker at 3 Links. Being a caregiver to someone who has a form of dementia can be exhausting. Finding social support is one of the best ways you can cope. At 3 Links, we host caregiver support meetings. Facilitated by 3 Links social workers, the meetings are tailored to your questions. Join us the second Wednesday of each month from 4 to 5 p.m. at 3 Links Care Center. Call 664-8865 or find out more at 3links.org.
This looks really good right here.
There's an amazing play by the All-Star Jorge Polanco. August 23rd to the 25th is Players Weekend at Target Field. The first 10,000 fans on Friday receive a Players Weekend nickname shirt courtesy of Sheboygan Sausage Company. That was going. Here comes Minnesota. Then on Sunday, Case IH presents a toy tractor for the first 5,000 kids 12 and under. Get your tickets at twinsbaseball.com.
Welcome back to the Wayne Eddy Affair on KYMN Radio out of Northfield, Minnesota. Sun shining now on this August 13th, 2019. And those beautiful potted plants that the city puts up each year, they are hanging from a brace on the lamppost. And when they first put them up, they're about 10 feet from the ground. And now they're almost halfway to the ground. It's amazing. They're just gorgeous. And they have put up the Welcome to Northfield, Defeat of Jesse James Day celebration banners that are up and down our street. So we're happy about that. That's coming up. But continuing with today, we have a fellow by the name of Pete Meile, middle initial J. And he has a new book out that we're talking about. But he also brought along a videographer. I think I got that word right. And also a writer or an editor, Daniel Lefebvre. Did I get that one right, Daniel Lefebvre?
You sure did, Wayne.
All right. So what is your job in life? Pretty young man. What do you do for a living?
Well, I actually work at United Health. I work in insurance, and it's kind of a boring thing, but mostly I spend my time getting involved with unusual individuals and going on strange adventures and studying space-time and all that sort of stuff, as well as a lot of running and drawing, that sort of thing.
Drawing?
Drawing, yes.
Okay. Now, do you work for an insurance company then?
I do.
I mean, are you like the guy that says that somebody's going to die at this time if they are male Caucasian? What is that called?
Why do you need?
No, the last I read was 79. The average male Caucasian dies by the age of 79.
Oh man, no.
And no, I'm close to that, and so I'm wondering.
I thought you were 99.
No. What's that called when they figure all that stuff out?
Lying. It's lying.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to lie on this show, that's for sure. So you're helping Pete in which way?
So with this book, I did the cover. I organized it for print. I put it out on all the outlets, so Google, Amazon. A lot of editing.
Oh, how do you know what to edit?
If it seems like nonsense, it's got to stay. Because that's the truth. If it seems like
He said it's not fiction. He said that.
Pete did?
Yeah.
When?
At the beginning of the show, he said, "This is not a fiction."
You know, you guys are not helping me with that.
No, I mean, like this book in itself, you have to have a background in a certain number of things to begin to understand it. Like, so you have to study like ancient civilizations, aliens, anything esoteric, and Pete touches on all the different topics with it. So you really have to, you either have to have a background or you have to want to know things that you didn't know before reading it. And it's a very eye-opening and enlightening book. I mean, I think this copy's for you. Are you a big reader?
I read all the time. I have a Kindle, and I use Amazon, and I'm constantly buying book. I buy a book at least once a week.
Nice. Did you buy this one yet?
I had the first time I've seen it. Peter J. Meile, PhD. No, I haven't seen it yet, so I'm anxious to have that copy autographed and put with all the books that I have that autographed by the authors that will sit in one place. And when I'm dead and gone, they'll say, "Oh, what are these for?" I'll give them to the hospital for their book fair. But I save them because I like to reread some of them. And I certainly am going to read your book, Peter. So you go to work every day and do your insurance thing, and then you do some research.
He's also a martial arts teacher. You
are?
Well, I was. I'm not any longer. That's actually how I ended up in insurance. I was a martial arts instructor for about 4 years. And then I kind of got out of that because I was just spending all my time teaching and training. So it was like 12 hours of martial arts every day. And I just kind of decided I need to expand in a few other ways. And I had gotten into remodeling. And then the fellow who I had worked for, he had his business kind of like trail off. And so he's like, "Well, I can't afford to keep you on anymore." So I'm like, okay. And I had to find a job. So I got a job in insurance. And during that time, I was actually unemployed for a couple of months, and so he and I worked like every morning on this project. Like we'd get up, meet at like 6 a.m. or something.
Well, where did you guys meet?
We actually met at Starbucks. I worked at a Starbucks when I was about 19, and he came in, and I don't know, like he was just kind of a weird customer.
Oh yeah.
Everybody was like, "Yeah, watch out for that guy."
Interesting. Yeah.
And I knew I had heard that he had like traveled a little bit, and so he came up, and I was helping him at the register, and he was like, we were just conversing, and I was like, "Yeah, I want to learn about India." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been to India." And I was like, "I want to learn about old India." And he said, "What did you say?" And it sounded like, have you ever seen him when he gets intense like that?
Oh yeah.
"What did you say?" And then from there we just started a friendship, and we actually reconnected a couple of years ago, and he was working on this or actually about a year ago. And he was working on this project, and he needed a cover, and he's like, I was like, "Well, let me I have a background in graphic design, so let me do the cover."
Well,
and
you're a man of many talents. Do you ever beat the crap out of somebody because you're so well?
No.
They teach you to be peaceful, right?
Yeah, I mean, like the whole martial art that I practiced was called Hwarang Do, so I'm going to do just a plug for him. Hwarang Do, South Minneapolis, 54th and Nicollet, Diamond Lake Road. Check it out, beautiful place. So the whole premise behind the martial art I practiced was, personal development through the martial arts. So you can become very skilled at harming people, but the mentality and the spirit and the energy of it is not that way. So no, I never really got into too many fights with people. Actually, when I started martial arts, I was kind of like I wouldn't say like a tough guy or anything. I just like was a little bit like edgy or a little bit like, kind of violent or whatever maybe. But
kind of violent.
But through martial arts, like I just developed more of a love for people than anything else. And I just was like, that's stupid. I don't want to think that way or be that way. And so...
Well, Daniel Lefebvre, my guest here, Pete's my guest, but Dan came along because he's involved with a book called Aiens. Do you think that you could have taken Pete when Pete was at his prime?
Pete is a Marine.
Yeah,
a skilled Marine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So...
Dan comes from a family of Marines.
Yeah, I do actually. My cousin is a Marine. Oh, my uncle's a Marine.
His father was a Marine.
Yeah. I probably should have been in the Marines, but my dad was like, "You don't want to go into the military. Trust me.
No.
Don't go. Go do something else."
Well, was your dad a Marine during the Vietnam conflict, or is he?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Did he tell you any stories?
Not so much. He's opened up about it more in recent years, but he didn't like to talk about it for a lot of years. So he's pretty much been tight-lipped about it. He has pictures and things like that I've looked into. He has an album of like going through basic. He was on the West Coast, so I think they call it like Hollywood Marine or something like that. Because he was.
Well, did he go to Nam?
He did. Yeah.
You were a nun.
Yes.
You were in prison.
Not in Nam, though.
No, but you were in prison. You
Yes,
had that experience too.
Yeah, I was in, I've been in probably half a dozen prisons in the United States, maybe 7 jails. I was in jail in Pakistan, I was in prison in Lebanon, and I was in jail in Morocco. I mean, if that's what you're asking.
I love your stories. I think
But
they're interesting.
But I have an
We gotta
academic
put- we
background.
have
I have an Associate of Arts, I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree, and a PhD.
So what's a PhD in?
PhD is in metaphysics.
In metaphysics?
Yes, metaphysics and anthropology.
And where do you go to school for a doctorate in that?
And metaphysics.
Yeah, or whatever your PhD is in.
It's in Sacramento.
The capital of California.
Yeah.
Something went on there recently in Sacramento.
Lots of things go on
Yeah.
in Sacramento.
Do you like California?
I love California. I love the girls.
Oh, yeah. You're still chasing women?
No, they chase me.
Oh, okay.
And it's a good thing I'm as short as I am because they don't see that far down.
Yeah. Anyhow, Pete Meile, the author, is with me this morning on the Wayne Eddy Affair. We'll talk more about your book, Peter, but at 12 minutes before 10 o'clock, I like to chit-chat with individuals and what are they up to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you if you would swing that mic over so Mark can get on it, because I want to, he doesn't need the headsets, I don't think.
Swing.
But you can wear them to feel important. Oops.
Dear.
All right, we have 2 cameras going. I don't know how many cameras you got going, but you dropped one on the floor. But Mark, lean into that mic or bring it to you, actually. All right?
Feels good. Feels good.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. So, Mark Holdridge, right?
Holdridge, H-O-L-D.
Holdridge.
Yes.
Holdridge. And he said you were with Google. Now, how can you be with Google in Minnesota? You're supposed to be out in the valley,
I
aren't
shoot
you?
the interiors of businesses. So when most businesses have a listing on Google Maps, I shoot the interiors of the businesses. But I do a lot of virtual tours of other places, and that's had me traveling a lot over the years.
Well, tell us about that a little bit.
A lot of Nicaragua and Costa Rica.
Were you scared in Nicaragua?
No.
Why not?
It's beautiful, nice people. I mean...
How long ago was that?
Oh, I've been going 15 years annually.
Uh-huh.
And Nicaragua, it's been 3 years since I've been there. It's a little... they're going through some things.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yep.
Well, would this be like the thing you can Google a neighborhood and you can zone in on your own home, or you can look up a business and take a view of as a car is traveling down?
Right, right.
So that's what you do, but on the interior of businesses.
Yes.
Do they buy that or request it?
Yes. Yeah, they request it as they're building their listing, and then I'll get a ping along with maybe another photographer, and we'll call the business and head in with our cameras.
Okay, and then they pay Google to have Google put it up on their website?
That's right. The business will pay the photographer.
Okay.
To put the photography on their business listing. That's what I do. Yeah, I could do the station today.
Yeah. Well, so KYMN Radio is going to get a freebie.
That's right.
And
Let's do it.
you remember? Did you notice I asked you to be sure to get the logo in?
I'll do a close up there, and the logo on the desk outside there.
Yeah, and then don't forget Jesse James.
And this cool statue that you're going to interview someone who built tomorrow.
With a chainsaw.
Wow.
And do you know what Northfield is known for?
Oh, absolutely. I do a lot of historical research too, so I've worked on Northfield as well.
Okay. What have you done?
Well, decorating bars and restaurants. I did the cowboy bars. And
the cowboy bars.
Cowboy bars. Cowboy Slims, Cowboy Jacks. There's 20 some in the United States, and they wanted Western themed things. So we have some Jesse James and some Northfield bank robbery shots there, and along some other bars. But that's a chain that put the Northfield pictures in all their bars.
I've never heard of it. Is there? Are there any in Minnesota?
Oh yeah, very popular.
Really?
Uptown Minneapolis, downtown Minneapolis, right next to the Target Center.
I'm not uptown and I'm not downtown anymore.
Well, that's what's there.
All right, the cowboy bars.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting. So where are you from?
South Minneapolis.
I know where that is.
Born and raised.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did your folks do for a living?
My dad taught. My mom, juvenile probation was her gig for many years.
Is that where she met Pete?
No. She's not that old.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
I heard that.
She might have had him on the caseload. I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You guys are not helping
No,
me.
she'd have to be older.
You're
than
not
you.
helping
She'd
me,
have to be
Mark.
older, much older than you.
Yeah. So did you go to, where'd you go to high school?
Southwest.
Southwest High School?
Southwest High School, yes.
I guess I've never heard of that one.
Yeah,
Southwest.
Yeah.
I've heard of South, I've heard of North.
No, there's West as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And so, did you, were you an athlete? By the way, this show is, I interview people about who they are and where they're from and what they
very
do.
nice, yeah.
Because everybody's interesting.
No, entrepreneur all these years, advertising, promotions, and that's in this field here with what these guys are up to. A lot of videography, and what's next to you is and you don't know this, is a 180 camera. It's looking at you and it's looking at me, and I'll be posting it up. But it's a really interesting medium where it's two lenses that mimic the eyeballs that will make you feel like you're sitting in a studio.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
All right. I used to do TV when I was a younger man, and the cameras were about
There was no
500
TV
times
when you were
bigger than
younger.
that.
Right. Look how tiny this guy is too.
Yeah. Is that a GoPro?
This
what do they
is
call it?
like a GoPro. It's the DJI Osmo. So it's new. It's got a lot of cool features. It's real similar to the GoPro 7. And then like that, the other one is that 180 view, but it also does the 360 view. So they're just miniature.
Are they waterproof?
Waterproof.
The 180 isn't.
And the 180 isn't, but you can get a case and go underwater with that too.
How much does one of that?
400, 500.
Well, that's not bad.
No,
Not at all.
No.
And then you just hook it up to your computer and see what you shot.
Yeah, work it over and then put it out to the world. Or put it out live, which would be a nice feature in the station here, is broadcasting live as we are live on the radio, but you could throw it over to Facebook and YouTube as well live.
Oh,
yeah,
cool. Streaming.
Yes.
All right, that's
Good
cool.
man.
So did you? What did you do right after going to Northwest, Southwest?
Southwest advertising. So for 30 years, I did the outdoor summer concert schedules in Minneapolis every year, and a lot of people.
When you say
love
you
that
did
piece.
that, what does that mean?
Did that. I compiled all the concerts, and then I built a magazine around it, and so advertising went in, and every year, the 1st of June, 30,000 people got the magazine. Direct mail, full color magazine, so it was fun to meet all the businesses over the years.
You know, I had a little newspaper back when I was involved in ownership here with this station, and I call it Radio Waves, and I would sell a package where you could have color if you wanted, or plain.
Right.
And I'll tell you, after doing that for a year, it would have been a really good deal, except you have to babysit print.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you're doing is running back. I mean, in radio sales, you sell a package, write a commercial, get the okay, and you're done.
And you run it again and again.
And in print, you got to, here's what I want. No, you better do it this way. No, no, we're not open till 10, we're open till 9.
Right.
And on and on. And
I talked about that on the way here in the car. I said about my typos and hours and how boring it was to get the hours and the phone number correct and all that. Yeah.
We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back. We have 3 gentlemen in studio right here on KYMN.
Can I put Pete back in his
Family owned and operated business since 1961. With a huge
That was
list
a
of
nice ball.
I wasn't warned.
Service department, second to
No
none.
idea what to
Paul
talk
and his
about.
staff want to invite everyone to Kenyon this weekend
That's
for
how
the
you do
Kenyon
it.
Release
People
Fest.
sit down
And
at
stop into the Meile Peter
9
J
o'clock
check
and
out
they
the new
say,
Ford Ranger
what are we
trucks.
going to talk
They have
about
8
for
in
2
stock and
hours?
more
At
on
11
order.
o'clock, they go,
Check
holy
out the
cow,
free
that
Chevy
went fast.
Mustang
And then I say,
Ford
can you come back?
including a
I
beautiful
mean,
and rare
Al Quia
red
had on
GT
6 times,
350R.
12 hours,
Come to Kenyon this
and we never
weekend,
got to
enjoy the
him
Kenyon
being
Rose
governor.
Fest, and stop in
Just
the showroom
talking
at
about
Meile
his
Peter
life.
I remember him, yeah.
Yeah, he was our
Home,
governor.
auto, and life are important to you. That's why the Northfield Insurance
We're going to just have
Agency
about
works hard to
3
provide
minutes
you
and
with
we
the
have
right
to do a little news
protection.
break.
Heffernan Stamp offer the products you need for the premier service you deserve. They carry business, auto, farm, homeowners, commercial, and bonds. Northfield Insurance is your independent agent, and they're connected with...
We're back on the Wayne Eddy Affair on a beautiful Tuesday morning, and we have a fellow by the name of Pete Meile, an author, in studio right now. We're talking about his book called The Aliens, and Pete has been on my show on many different occasions, and a very interesting guy. We went through boot camp, and we went through Vietnam, and we went to India, we went to Africa, and I haven't talked to you on my show here for about a year, I think it is, and I wanted to hear about your exploits in the last year or so when you were sending me the postcards of these beautiful temples and other beautiful geographical locations.
Did I ever tell you about the Ganges Dragonway?
Can you tell me in 2 minutes and
No.
36 seconds? Okay, we'll do that after the news
Sure.
coming up. So, but for the next 2 minutes, where was your last visit in regards to coming back to the United States from where, when? Your last one?
The last time I came into the United States was a year ago from India.
Okay.
But before that, I was in some of the pictures that I showed you. I was in Meile and Timbuktu, and
Tell me about Timbuktu. Why do I want to? From here to Timbuktu, isn't there some Second World War story?
Timbuktu became famous in the 15th century because the Muslims they had a salt mine in Mauritania, and they would bring in 400-pound blocks on camels of salt to this desert town in Mali, Africa. And Mali had a lot of gold and diamonds. And the natives, they can't eat gold and they can't eat the diamonds. It doesn't do them any good, So they traded 400-pound blocks of salt for 400 pounds of gold. And they did this by the tons. And so they built, the Arabs built a lot of structures there. They built a university there called the University of Timbuktu. And that is why Timbuktu became famous. How it got its name, this place in the desert that I learned when I was in Timbuktu was that the water in the language at that time in Timbuktu was called Tim, and the slave that gave the water to the camels and the camel drivers from Mauritania was called Buktu. So,
Timbuktu, from here to Timbuktu. That was a song or a marching thing for during the Second World War, I believe. Google it.
I wouldn't know, Wayne.
Okay.
I'm not that old again, man.
Okay, we are going to take a break on KYMN 1080 Radio, Northfield. Excuse me, Northfield, Minnesota. But we are going to have a little look at the news. We'll be back with Pete and crew in just a moment.
Proposal.
Beautiful Tuesday morning, August the 13th, the year 2019. My guest this morning is Pete Meile. He's been a guest of mine on more than one occasion, and he just had a book, and it just has been published, and he has an associate with him, Daniel Lefebvre, and also a guy from Google's here named Mark Holdridge. And we're just chit-chatting about the book that Pete has written, and you indicated it's fact, not fiction, and I smile when you say that, and I guess I'm just not into the alien thing, but I honestly believe there is something somewhere out in which universe. You mentioned there were endless universes.
Well, that's what these extraterrestrials said, that there were countless numbers of universes.
Yeah.
And there's a map in my book that the aliens did that is in 3 dimensions: third dimension, fourth dimension, and fifth dimension.
That was my theme song for KYMN Radio, Up and Away, the first day we broadcast by the fifth dimension.
Really? So,
see if we can connect.
Exactly. We always have been able to.
So, how do you get people to believe this stuff? Like I said, I believe that there is something else other than Earth that has some intelligence.
Yeah, well, we live for a short time, and people that are in control want to keep their control, so they destroy things that have happened before. Like, for example, the Protestants and the Catholics had big problems back in Europe in the, what was it, the 16th century, 15th century, where the Protestants were burning Catholics at the stake and vice versa. Okay, so the records of these extraterrestrials were destroyed by Muslims, by the English when they came to India, and by, just getting rid of the history, especially when they say they're going to be back in 5 days, and that really relates to 472,000 of our years. So, but if you have a background in mathematics or a background in physics or astronomy in today's age, you know that there is more than, that the planet is round, we're floating in space, we're moving forward at over 1,000 miles an hour, and things are still balanced properly. What gravity is, that is the sinking of our star into the space-time continuum, and the planets falling into it, but not completely, is what holds us together. That's gravity. And when the star collapses, gets too heavy, it'll fall through the space-time continuum, and the rest of the planets will go with it, turn to dust.
So we're talking black holes someday?
Black hole is just another common phenomenon in space.
So you were going to tell me a story before the time.
Oh, the Ganges dragon story.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting up there in years now. I left home when I was 17. Tried to join the Foreign Legion, and couldn't get it together to be able to do that because I just didn't know enough. Joined the Marines when I was 17. And I've been in and out of all kinds of things, and also in trouble here and there, just not paying attention to the laws and so on. So I wound up in jails, in prison for different kinds of things. I went to jail in Morocco for my hair was too long, and I went to prison in Lebanon for taking pictures during an Israeli bombing. And I went to jail in Pakistan for smuggling money. I had too much money with me because we were smuggling something else somewhere else, and I just took the money and was going to India.
So which is the worst of those you just mentioned, the three?
Well, you got to remember that I only went to jail in Pakistan, not to prison. And prison in Pakistan is a lot worse than jail. So I was fortunate to I got out of jail, and that wasn't too bad. But in Lebanon, they told me they were going to shoot me that morning in a firing squad, and I've been handcuffed to the bottom of a table in the bottom of this prison in a place called Tyre or Tyr or Sur. It has a number of names. And that could have been bad if I was shot that morning, but I didn't. I thought that I was actually going to be shot when this captain, he has two guys with him. They looked like they were about 15 years old. They were in the Black Hand, and they had submachine guns slung upside down over their shoulders. And he said, well, you might as well admit you're a spy because we're going to shoot you anyway. So I figured if they're going to shoot me anyway, I might as well give them a piece of what I got left of my mind. So I said, I'm not a spy. So if you're going to shoot me for what I am. He says, what are you? I said, I'm a guitar player from New York. So he said, where's your guitar? I said, my guitar is in my hotel room in Beirut. He said, well, let me ask you some questions. He says, don't you think the Israelis are all wrong and the Lebanese are all right? That's how he put it. I said, look, I can't tell the difference between the Lebanese and the Israelis. I said, if you put one next to each other, I said, they look like brothers, same father, same mother. And I said, I can't tell their languages apart either. They just sound like monkeys chattering to me. So he said, what country are you from? I said, the United States. He said, in your country, they allow you to take pictures of bombings? I said, sure, why not? So he said, you see these two guys here? I said, yeah. I said, I can't miss them. He said, I asked him, you seem like an educated fellow. I said, you speak English really well. He said, I am educated. I said, I went to college. So I figured, well, I'm going to live a few minutes longer. I'm going to have a conversation with him. I said, where did you go to college? He said, University of Beirut. I said, what'd you get your degree in? He said, sociology. I said, well, that's apropos for me to be killed by a sociologist, you know. So he said, look. He said, these two guys, I'm going to send them to your hotel room in Beirut, which was about 300 miles, something like that, from where I was. He said, if you don't have a guitar in your hotel, he said, they're going to shoot you right there. He said, if you do have a guitar, he said, they're going to put you on a plane and send you out of here. I said, how about unhandcuffing me? Because, you know, they beat me up down there, a bunch of these guys, and when I was handcuffed, and I had blood was closing my eyes, and, you know, and my shirt was all torn and everything. So I said, cool. I said, let's go. I said, how about unhandcuffing me? So he unhandcuffs me. I don't get a chance to clean up or anything, just in a Jeep, and we're riding up to Beirut. So when I come in my building, the bartender is a big bar. It's an old building. This is in Hamra Street in West Beirut. The bartender is a huge guy. He sees me with these two black-hand guys, and with one hand leaps over the bar and dives out the door, the back door. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think he was in that great a shape, but he was. So I go to my room, and I was just, you know, I put my guitar under my bed, and it was a Martin guitar, D1220, and I thought, and by the way, you know, I have records out, so you can look up my records. So.
Are you talking criminal record, or are you talking about musical records?
Well, both are online, okay? But I don't know why the hell they would want to look at my criminal records, you know? So, I was just hoping, I said, geez, I hope nobody took my guitar or stole my guitar, because now my life depends upon my guitar being under my bed. So I look under there, and there's my guitar. At least the case was there, you know? So I pulled out the case, put it on the bed, and I went to open the case. They both pull those machine guns on me, and one pushes me out of the way, and they open the case, and they see that there's a guitar, and I was happy about that, but I wasn't happy that they still had the machine guns on me. Then they closed the guitar, locked it up. They just said, "Come on, let's go," and they took me to the airport. And I guess that they were hicks or something, because the pilot could hardly understand them when they said, we're putting this guy on your plane. You know, no ticket, no exit stamp, no nothing. I'm just going, you know. I got my guitar. So I get on the plane, you know, I mean, the pilot looks at me, you know, I mean, I got blood all over me and my shirt's torn. I'm come on with two 15-year-old guys with machine guns, you know, didn't look good. So, I mean, in New York, it's just another thing, but, you know, this is Lebanon. So, I finally get a seat in back, you know, and the guys, the 15-year-old guys, the black hand, they leave, and the plane takes off. And I'm sitting next to this big guy. And I said, hey, so I said, hi. And he looked at me. He didn't talk to me. He wouldn't want to talk to me. I said, look, I said, if you answer me one question, I said, I won't bother you anymore. He said, what is it? In a thick German accent, speaking English. I said, where's this plane going? And he didn't like that question. But somebody up front yelled, we're going to Ankara. And I didn't know where Ankara was. I said, where's Ankara? He said, it's in Turkey. And I guess it's the capital of Turkey, okay? So, no, at first he said we were going to Munich. Then he said we're going to Ankara to refuel. So, he said, we're journalists. You know, we're being kicked out of Lebanon because there's a war on. I said, oh, great. So, okay. So they didn't ask me why I was on the plane, nothing, okay? So we land in Ankara, And it's a small old like U.S. plane. Had about maybe 40 seats on it, 42 seats, something like that. So they open the back. There's a big doorway in the back so we get some air. And I see these two Turks pumping gasoline into the plane. So I holler down to the two guys pumping gas. I said, "Hey, anchor up." You know, when I point, is it this way? Is it that way? And they look at each other and laugh. I said, "Listen," I could tell they don't speak English. I said, "Listen, you idiots." I said, "Where is anchor up?" And there was some guy points over there or something like that. So I said, "Look," I said, "this is my stop, man. I'm getting off." Everybody was glad to get rid of me. You could see their faces brighten up. So I hang my guitar out, drop my guitar off, and then, because it's still a ways to the ground, okay? And even though I was 28, I still, I wasn't in good enough condition to be jumping like 7 or 8 feet or whatever it was. So I hang and I jump. And I walk along, I see a barracks there. And I walk into the barracks and there's nobody there. There's nobody, okay? So I'm looking around, I got my guitar, and then I see there's another door. There's a door that just goes right out into the street. I could have just walked right into Istanbul, or Ankara rather. So I see there's a swinging door, and there's a little window in the door covered with some kind of plastic or something. So I look through there, and there's a bunch of soldiers in a huddle. They all have guns over their shoulders, rifles, and I thought, Jesus, I hate to go in there because I know they're going to harass me or something. But what am I going to do? I don't want to be walking around Ankara and then picked up by the police. I have, no reason for being there. So I push open the swinging door, let it go, and I put my hands up so they can see that I don't have any weapons or anything. And I say, "Hi, how's everybody doing this morning?" And they'll turn around and look, and their mouths just drop open. And it took about 3 full seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then they all run at me at once. And I thought, yes, here it comes. And they all start babbling to me in Turkish, which I don't speak any Turkish. So I said English. I kept saying English, English. So they go get a doctor. This doctor's supposed to speak English. I don't know, when you were a kid, did you ever try to speak to a friend of yours underwater at a swimming pool?
I have.
Okay. So, well, that's what it sounds like. Exactly. That's it. Hey, you could make it in Turkey.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to this, and the guy says, "Give me your passport." So he looks at my passport, and he says, "You're a spy." I said, "No, man." I said, "I'm not a spy, okay? I just went through that whole rigmarole with the Lebanese." But, I mean, you look at me, I'm covered with blood, my shirt's all torn up. He said, "Well, he said, what are you doing in Turkey?" He said, "You don't have a visa. You haven't got an exit stamp from Lebanon. How come you're all beat up?" I said, "Because they threw me in prison for being a spy because I was taking pictures during a bombing." He said, "Okay, you're going to prison." I said, "Look, I have an idea, okay?" He said, "Well," before I had a chance to say anything else, he said, "You can't come into Turkey anymore." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because there's a hoof and mouth epidemic and we don't let anybody in. Turkey's closed to the world right now." I said, "Look, I have an idea. It's going to save your government a lot of money and me a lot of headaches." And he asked me, he said, "What is it?" I said, "Why don't you just give me an inoculation, give me a stamp on my passport, and let me go." He said, "Okay." Wow, I couldn't believe it. I thought, I wonder what he was going to inoculate me with. So he comes back. I said, "You really a doctor?" He said, yeah. So he comes back, and I had a shot card with my passport. So he gives me a shot or anything, and I said, "Listen, how do I avoid hoof and mouth disease?" And he smiles. He says, "Don't step in any feces." So then when I left the barracks into the street, there was cow manure and and everywhere. So when I went to finally leave the country, and it opened months later, I'm sitting on a bus next to this Muslim kid from Indonesia who just graduated from college in London. He's passing through England. I'm passing through Turkey because they just opened. And we're on a bus headed for Iran. We're going to Tehran. And just before the border comes up, he said, "You were American?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I've never seen an American passport." He said, "Can I see your passport?" I said, "Sure, here, take a look." And he goes through the passport, and then he jumps up and he says, "You're a spy." I said, "Sit down, sit down." I said, "What do you mean I'm a spy?" I said, "Can you read Turkish?" He said, "Yeah." He says, "It says right here." He says, I said, "Is it just on this page?" Page 19. He said, "Yeah." I said, "Just sit down." I said, "If I was a real spy, I have no problem killing you, would I?" I said, "Just sit down." So the border is coming right up. I can see the guards. So I just go, pow, tear out the page, and my hand was shaking so much I was going to crumble it and throw it out the window, but I couldn't get my hand to crush it completely. So I just threw it out the window. And when I crossed the border, it was a clean rip. They never noticed that page was gone. And then I went into Iran. A lot of things happened after that.
You know, the stories are very fascinating and interesting. And my guest this morning, my storyteller this morning, is Pete Meile. He's been with me on KYMN Radio many times in the past 10 years or more. And I love to hear your stories. I sometimes have to say, yeah, sure. But they're interesting. And I'm wondering now, you have this book called Aliens. And
it's called Aliens, and there's a subtitle called "And the Multi-Paradox of Reality."
All right, and we'll talk about that more, but I'm going to take a break. But my question is, have you written, or are you going to write your life story? Because that is more believable and certainly entertaining. You can answer me in just a moment.
Annual Kenyon Rose Fest. There's festivities all weekend long. Starting at 8:30 on Friday night, Community is hosting.
I said I asked him the same thing.
Flannel in a 21 plus no cover charge street dance. On Saturday, the parade will start at 4 p.m., followed by a beanbag dance for the community, and Dance the Night Away with Lost Highway. It's an all-ages dance with a $10 cover. It's all happening at the Kenyon Muni during Kenyon's Rose Fest this weekend. For a full list of events, check out KenyonRoseFest.com or KYMN's calendar events page.
Your vehicle's engine warning light could mean something as simple as a loose gas cap or something serious and potentially expensive if you don't address it right away. They are professional technicians at Witt Brothers Service.
Camera wouldn't have made it without the jump pack.
As part of your overall preventative maintenance program. It could save you from costly problems down the road.
Can we get some coffee sometime and you can school me on some camera stuff?
Sure.
Teach me about cars. Absolutely. And entrepreneurs.
You know, one of the things that I'm thinking right now is that you probably wonder, who's this Pete Meile? What does he look like? All of these stories that he's telling, and I'll tell you what you can do. We have a guy here from help me out.
Google.
Mark. Mark is here from what's it called?
Google.
Google Maps.
Global Maps. Yeah.
Google Maps.
Google Maps. Okay. Boy. Anyhow, he's doing...
And he's sober, folks.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Occasionally I lose a word. That happens. But this guy, Mark Holdridge, is videotaping this interview, and it's going to be up on Google somewhere, somehow, under some title, which you'll learn at the end of the show.
YouTube.
So you can have an idea of what this guy, Pete Meile, looks like, who's telling these stories that are very exciting and movie-esque, if you will, and you'll see what he looks like. Number one, he's not 6'4" and 285 pounds. He's about half that.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Well, anyhow.
And I'm getting smaller as the years
Yeah,
go on.
and so am I. I used to be proud 6 feet tall. I'm not anymore.
I just go by my emotional age now, which is about 10.
You know, my ego is similar. I actually put 5'11" and a half on my license last time instead of 6, you know. Before it had to be 6. But one of the questions that you were asked by Daniel Lefebvre, who has helped you put this book together and promote it, is why not a personal story from the time you grew up all the way through today? And all the stories that I've heard from you, and I'm sure there are many more, are a lot more interesting to me than aliens. I'm sorry about that.
Look, Wayne, I was never really interested in my life. I was interested in things outside of my life, you know. So, when I first came to India, I saw all these crazy statues of gods. Well, they seem crazy to me. I'm sure I didn't mean to offend any Hindu people who actually believe that these things are gods, you know. And you know, I grew up Catholic and went to Catholic school, you know. But as I got older and I started moving around the planet, everybody had their own gods and so on, and everybody said these are gods, and the Hindus, they have 330 million gods, and I mean, how can you even memorize them all?
Well, when you say that, is that based on each individual? Well, obviously not, but every other individual has their own belief in a separate god?
No, I think these gods...
330 million different gods is an awful lot.
Well, they were the extraterrestrials that came here and the creatures that they made.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
So that's, you know, I was, until I read, you know, like in Catholicism, in the United States, where I grew up in New York City, and Yonkers, New York, went to high school in Yonkers. In the churches, we had the Stations of the Cross. Do you know what that is?
I used to be an altar boy. So
all right. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I was an altar boy in high school. I was a master of ceremonies, you know. So I flunked Latin twice, had to go to summer school twice for Latin. You did too?
You probably... I did. I flunked Latin twice and had to go to summer school.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know.
Who knew that? Yeah. No, but it's a patron.
No, let's start that way. Okay, so in these temples in India, they had the Bhagavad Gita, and they had like...
Say that again?
The Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, yeah.
And they had like the stations of their interpretation of the Stations of the Cross, okay? And I just thought, oh, it's just a religion. We've got Stations of the Cross or whatever too, you know? But until I actually started reading the Bhagavad Gita in English, I thought, some of these things are so bizarre, you know? They talk about space, and they talk about stars, and they talk about going back to their planet, and these kinds of things, and riding dinosaurs, and just a lot of stuff that was actually over my head, even though I had been in college. So I began reading their history in Veda, which was later called the Vedas because it was sectioned into 4 different sections. So-called scholars, now they don't like calling me a scholar because I've been in jail and I've been in prison, and the reason why those things have happened to me is because I didn't know what the hell I was doing going around the planet. I just went. You know, people study, they get guides, they do all of these things, but I was just a natural born idiot, and I just went out there. You know, when I went to cross the Sahara Desert, I didn't even know what the Sahara Desert was. I was just traveling around the world, and I saw this big sign. It said, across this big desert road, it said, "Welcome to the Sahara Desert." And I thought, wow, this must be it. So some kid ran up to me and he said, in French, you know, at that time I didn't speak much French, and he said, "How are you going to cross the desert?" I said, "I don't know. I never thought about it." I said, "How do you cross?" He said, "Well, you can either take a truck, or you can take a train." And I said, "Well, how much does it cost?" He said, "Well, the truck is 30 days, $30. Sounds like a jail sentence. I've had one of those. And he said the other train is 52 days and $20. I said, okay. I said, I'll take the train. I said, I got more time than money. So I said, show me where it is. So the kid is walking along, and I think, this is a hustle, man, because I don't see any train. And I said, I just see a bunch of camels, and I thought, oh my God, it's a camel train. I mean, I was born in Kew Gardens, Queens. Well, we didn't have any camels running around there, you know. So, but okay, cool. So that's how I got across the desert by camel. And I thought 52 days on a camel, and I get sick out there. I mean, if you've never drunk water out of an oasis, I wouldn't advise that without putting something in the water that kills the amoebas, because I got sick from the oasis water. And then they had this psychic or whatever he was, you know, spitting in the sand and rubbing his hands together and putting it on my stomach and trying to cure me from this. But I've had a number of illnesses, travel, yellow fever, falciparum malaria, salmonella, amoebic dysentery, and so on.
Did the camels spit at you? Aren't they known for spitting?
Yeah, I had a pretty good camel. I got along with them okay. They pack camels, the Arabs pack. This is my particular view, okay? It's because I know there's some other camel driver out there that's going to get on my case. But I think that the Arabs pack camels a lot better than Indians in India pack camels. Because I crossed that desert, that 200,000 square mile desert, thaw desert, that was caused by an atomic war. Same as the Pan-Sahara Desert. That's why there's so much glass in the desert. That's fused sand from nuclear explosions. Okay, but the camels in India, they put all the gear, especially if you're a man, okay, because the saddle pushes forward with all that gear on it, and your balls get crushed in the head of the saddle and the camel's neck, where the Arabs pack the gear on separate gear carrying camels. Okay. But you want to make sure you take pure water with you when you cross that desert.
You mentioned that you were raised in Queens, and I had a guy on recently that's an entrepreneur and inventor, and quite a fascinating guy. I think he grew up in Brooklyn, but tell me a little bit about Queens.
Queens is in Brooklyn, and it's in Long Island.
Okay. Queens is in Brooklyn and in Long Island?
Yes, it's part of Long Island and part of Brooklyn.
Well, I don't know. How does that work?
It's a very complicated thing. It was drawn up long ago, even before you, Wayne.
Yeah. And is it a political thing? Was it a political thing, or do you not know?
I really don't. Don't know, except that the maps and so on that were drawn up. I don't think that they imagined that there would be so many people there.
Yeah. Well, most everybody is more familiar with Manhattan, or the island, as they call it, right?
Yeah.
And so Queens would be what, north of Manhattan?
Queens is northeast.
Northeast? Closer to the ocean.
Yeah, it's close to the ocean.
Is that where Coney Island is?
Coney Island is in Rockaway. It's on the ocean.
Oh.
And it's Brooklyn.
So was it, what year were you born?
45.
Okay, so you were a teenager when rock and roll came around, 1955. Elvis Presley and Fats Domino and Wild Bill Haley. So you were in your teen years as rock and roll was establishing itself 55 to 60 plus. Yeah. So were you a punk kid that went to a Catholic school and got in trouble, or were you?
No, I never got in trouble in school except for failing Latin. You know, look, I was one of the million or so orphans after World War II, and I was left on a church doorstep in Kew Gardens, Queens, right after the war, and this priest gave me to some people that he knew, and I grew up mostly in Yonkers. Went to they were Catholics.
Hello, Dolly. That was set in Yonkers.
Yeah, the Hello Dolly train station, which is Larkin Plaza.
Yeah.
Larkin Plaza, yeah.
So now they have a law here in Minnesota for sure that if you have a child, a woman bears a child, and she doesn't want to be responsible for it, that they can leave it at a church or leave it at a hospital, and there'll be no charges against her or him, and rather than killing the baby. All right. So in your situation, you were left on the doorstep of a church.
Yeah.
So who raised you?
Well, the priest first, because the priest was from Germany. We just got finished with the war with Germany. The priest was from Germany, and he didn't know anything about babies. And he had a cleaning lady. She was about 19 years old. And he says, "Hey, you want a kid?" And she said no. But he said, "Look, how about doing me a favor? Keep the kid for a while until I find him a family." So about 2 weeks later, that girl said, "Hey, did you ever find that kid a family?" He said, "What kid?" He said, "The kid you gave me." She said, "I don't want a child." She said, "It's not my child. I'm not married. And you said that you were giving it to a family." So he knew a guy. The guy was a U-boat commander. His name was John Brownwater, U-boat 105. They sunk it off Long Island. And his daughter had just married an Italian, and they didn't have any children. I don't think they knew that they couldn't have children at that time, but he went to see the U-boat commander, and the U-boat commander asked his daughter, "Do you want a child?" And she said, "Well, what's it look like or whatever?" He said, "It's an Italian kid." She said, "Does it have all its body parts and everything?" And he said, "Yeah, it's not blind and this kind of thing." So, and she asked her husband, "Do you want to take in a kid as an orphan left at the church?" He said no. But she really wanted a kid, and so with that, they got me. And she thought it was a blessing. My old man had other ideas about it.
Your old man was a U-boat?
No, her father was it was her cousin. It was her cousin who was a U-boat commander. Yeah, and
that's just an aside to the story. He wasn't captured off the shores.
No, he surrendered. He surrendered his U-boat. Okay. He surrendered it, and when he went to turn in his U-boat,
105.
They thought that he was out in the ocean, and he came up in Long Island Sound.
That's an interesting story. So now this couple raised you.
Yeah, they raised me. They were living, I believe, at that time, together in East Greenwich Village, and they moved to Yonkers, New York, and I grew up there in Yonkers. I went to Our Lady of the Holy Rosary grade school. First I went to Knights of Columbus kindergarten, then Our Lady of the Holy Rosary grade school for 8 years. And then I believe it still is the best high school in Yonkers, which was Sacred Heart High School, where they taught trigonometry, chemistry, physics, Latin, that kind of thing. And
where did Queens come in?
Queens was where I was born.
Oh, okay. But you grew up in Yonkers.
Yeah.
Which is how far from New York City?
Well, New York City has an east side, a west side, an uptown, and downtown. So when you go on the uptown, on the west side from Manhattan to 242nd Street and Van Cortlandt Park, that's the last stop. And then there are a few blocks because they wanted a buffer zone to Yonkers. So you got to take the bus from there about 6 or 7 blocks or whatever it is, and that's Yonkers.
Okay, so it's a suburb. Inner circle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you take acting lessons when you were in high school?
Well, look, if you go to Catholic school, you got to act. because they said, did you do your homework and did you do your Latin and stuff like this?
Oh, Pete is quite a guy. Pete Meile, my guest on KYMN Radio. He has a book he has just written, and it has a beautiful cover on it. He has a fellow that helped promote it in studio with him right now, Peter J. Meile, PhD, Aliens and the Multi-Paradox of Reality. We're going to take a brief break, and we're going to come back and continue our conversation. It is 20 minutes before 11 o'clock on the Wayne Eddy Affair.
Wayne,
welcomes you continuing this
kind of has been passed down for like centuries or millenniums or whatever. They always say that humankind has been on basically like a downward trajectory from to where it is right now, and they came from a state where they were actually more enlightened, they understood more of the laws of nature, and they utilized things in a different way than they do now. They say that like now humanity has become more like crystallized into their physical form, so they've become more physical, less mental, less spiritual, and become more like a body walking around eating, drinking, and sleeping. So they always state, and if you study any ancient wisdom stuff, that mankind was at a higher level many centuries ago, or actually many thousands of years ago than they are now.
So you look at Area 51 out in Nevada, right?
Okay.
And people have been talking about the flying saucers that the U.S. government has been hiding and all that. And now, evidently, they're going into it deeper, and the government is going to share more information about alleged UFOs, where there have been videos taken from military aircraft and also commercial aircraft. And the thing is, what is that? There's a book called This Baffling World that was published probably about 1967.
Okay.
And it has all kinds of weird things about Earth and life and baffling things, and how do you explain it? And in that book, Pete, you'd be happy to know, they're talking about unidentified flying objects. And in one particular paragraph, they talk about a broadcaster in Tomah, Wisconsin, that cited a UFO and couldn't explain it, and others had verified that they saw it too, and that was yours truly. So I'm in the book as a guy that saw a UFO, you know, so how about that?
So, you know,
you have not seen a UFO, have you?
Yes, I.
Where'd you see yours?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis?
Mm-hmm. You want me to go on?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what, I got phone calls at the radio station. There's something in the sky, we can't figure out what it is. And I would put on a record, and I'd leave the studio, and I'd run down the hallway on the 3rd floor, go out on the back porch and look, and go, oh my God. And then I would run back to the studio and verify that I saw the same thing that the callers are calling, and I could put them on the air.
Look, the United States has worked with extraterrestrials for a long period of time, and they make all kinds of vehicles that are made from extraterrestrial designs. You know, if you listen to Bob Lazar, or you listen to John Lear, or any of the guys, the engineers out of Skunk Works, they're about the technology in the United States government about extraterrestrial vehicles is approximately 500 years beyond where we are now. Probably 95%, 98% of all the UFOs that you see are made by people like the Skunk Works people.
What is Skunk Works?
Skunk Works is a place where...
Is that New Mexico?
Well, I really don't want to talk too much about Skunk Works. You could look up Skunk Works on Google, and there are engineers that I've never worked for these people. I'm not an engineer, you know, but I have investigated a little bit on what Skunk Works is and where their technology is at. The United States has had anti-gravity since 1954. We've never needed gasoline to send rockets to the moon or anything ridiculous like that. We've never needed gasoline for anything. We've never needed windmills or any of this kind of nonsense. They're approximately where we are now compared to where Columbus was in his day. So, and they have a plan for us, the MJ-12 and...
Who's they and what's an MJ-12?
MJ-12 is an organization of people that work with extraterrestrials. When you investigate these things, I mean, if you're interested in investigating instead of just reading material or watching television about extraterrestrials, you're usually going to see and hear about things that the government doesn't care, really whether you know or you don't know. And my book is about extraterrestrials that took over this planet for 300 million years and they left 5,000 years ago. So they don't care about that kind of thing. And they're coming back, they said, in 5 days, which is for us, 472,000 years. So they don't care about that because we only live for 100 years. But skunkworks is a different situation.
All right. I'm just have to say that your imagination or your belief, your reality to yourself is really far-fetched.
It's called education.
Yeah, and I just shake my head and say, yeah, sure, Pete. But you do have wonderful stories that I can believe, like stories that you just told in regards to the desert and all that, But
down-to-earth stories.
But I swear I do believe that there's something out there other than Earth and people.
Do you believe that some people can see the future?
No. Well, wait a minute. Congressman Cortez can, and Al Gore can. They know in 10 to 12 years it's over. Those are political figures, by the way. Okay.
Well, anyway, Wayne.
I'm listening.
You're going to read my book.
I am.
And it's been, all of these things are from records that are still in existence and things that happened many, many, many years ago.
Do you have a reference point? Like some books will say this particular item of information was gleaned from National Geographic, August 12th edition or something like that?
All of my records in here are documented from the original documents and where they are. You can look these things up, and some of the things you might have to get translated yourself, like they wrote down how to build 200 different kinds of extraterrestrial vehicles, interdimensional, intergalactic vehicles, how to build them, how to fly them, but
who's they?
These extraterrestrials, but those records were built for training extraterrestrial pilots that were born on this planet. The humans that we have now, they can't do those things. They can build some of them, like you see skunkworks can build some extraterrestrial vehicles. Well, some vehicles based on extraterrestrial stuff, but when you look at skunkworks vehicles, if you look closely, you'll see pipes and so on underneath there. Like, for example, a little while ago, a motorcycle rider took pictures of a large pyramid that was floating over the highway. You can find this on YouTube or go on Google and you'll see the movie that he put up. But if you look closely, you'll see that there are pipes and so on underneath this floating pyramid. But when you see those things way up high, you can't tell that they're not extraterrestrial. But they're not. Although extraterrestrials have all kinds of different shapes and so on, because there are hundreds of trillions of planets that have people flying around and all kinds of stuff. But look at it like this. The government needs your money. Do you recall a time when the military was ordering toilet paper for like $700 a roll, and screws for $175 each?
Yeah.
Okay, and people complained about that, but they never said where the money goes. The money goes to these projects, like building these projects. You ever heard of Colonel Corso?
No.
Colonel Corso was the colonel who was given the crash material from what happened in Roswell and what happened in Aztec, those crashes. And those crashes weren't extraterrestrials. They were called EBEs. They're extra-biological entities built by extraterrestrials on a binary planet, on a binary star system 30 light years from here called Zeta Reticuli, which they sent here to...
There's your Latin.
Very good, Wayne. But I remember I flunked Latin.
Yeah, okay.
Twice.
Zeta Reticuli. Go ahead.
Zeta Reticuli.
Okay.
And so on. So they have a plan. They have a plan. And MJ12 has a plan. So now people have heard these things. So a lot of people have heard them that perhaps never heard of Bob Lazar or Colonel Corso or MJ12 or Skunk Works. But I don't want to talk too much about their projects. I really, I'm not involved in those projects, but I am involved in translating the Vedas of these extraterrestrials. And you want to learn about extraterrestrials that lived here for over 300 million years.
We're going to come back and promote your book right after.
You see this book?
Yeah. Okay. We're going to come finish the commercial segment, and we'll have a couple minutes to tell people how, when, where, why, how much, or whatever, to promote your book, because you want people to read it, because you want people to understand what you believe is real.
It's history.
Yeah.
In your living community in Northfield. Hi, I'm Colonel Bueller, Sales and Outreach Specialist at the Benedictine Living Community.
What do you hear
in Northfield. It's a new community providing free independent living, assisted living, and memory care. We opened this fall, but our information center is now open. I'd love for you to stop.
Wayne's always wanted to hear me more clearly.
Oh yeah.
What?
He wants to. The headphones you can hear more clearly.
Yeah.
In there, yeah.
216-0043.
How long is the commercial?
We have a minute.
1080 is once again
I'm gonna leave it run.
for best radio station in southern Minnesota, and two of our personalities.
This book's
are
always
for
been in it, so
best
that's really
radio
good.
Personality. The morning show's Jeff Johnson.
They're coming with me
All-wheel
to
drive
India.
host.
What?
These guys are coming with me to India. They're coming with me.
Coming with you.
We
to
are
India.
Real Radio. Vote for your favorite radio station and personality daily
30
at
seconds.
southernminscene.com now through September 2nd. Celebrate summer and the beauty of roses.
Hey, what do you mean they're coming with you?
Friday through Sunday.
They're coming along with
Fridays
To
Sing Like
India.
For Us.
Oh,
India.
okay. I didn't know you were going to India.
Yeah, and I'll put this on YouTube.
Okay.
Since you were asking, so I could write that down for you.
Car show. Both start at
Yep.
8 a.m. Then enjoy.
You're in my
fun,
book,
playful
Wayne. This
I didn't
show.
know that. Let's do that on the air.
4 p.m. featuring
You mentioned
We'll
Wayne
do
in
a
the air.
wrap. We have 3 minutes.
He mentions you in there. Yeah. I don't remember.
We're back live and in color on the Wayne Eddy Affair. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. My guest this morning is Pete Meile. He is an author, and he just had a book published called Aliens, and there's a subtitle on there that he likes to include, The Multi-Paradox of Reality, and it's fascinating. And how can I get a book like that? How can our listeners get hooked up with your book?
If you go on Amazon and you put in Aliens and the Multi-Paradox of Reality by Peter J. Meile, M-I-E-L-E, this is the best book on what happened on this planet for over 300 million years, where these aliens built and lived and interacted on this planet, and going back and forth to their planets, plural, which is in the 6th dimension of Capricorn. And it's all documented.
All right. By the way, I want to say thank you to you, Daniel Lefebvre, for coming in and saying hello.
Hey,
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
And
Can I
yes,
take a
you
moment
can.
to do one thing? I
Yes.
just want to wish my mother a happy birthday. She turned 70 today. Happy birthday, Mom. You're beautiful. Thank you for everything.
That's the first time.
Happy birthday.
Good. Well, it's happened before, but I'm glad you had a chance to do that. Mark, do you want to say anything? He's a videographer. He just says, nope, it's all pictures
But
for
these
me.
fellows are going to come with me to India and photograph this rare place.
Oh.
Very rare place. And
what's it called?
I can't tell you that.
Okay, you're going to India, the three of you?
Yeah.
And you're going to videotape a rare place.
Yes.
That's going to help uphold the information in your new book called Aliens.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that sounds like a plan.
It
So now you told me earlier that I'm in that book.
Yes, you are in that book, the radio station, and so on. Yes.
Oh, okay. And I'm going to have to read it, find out why. Unless you're. I don't know why. Well, you'll tell me as soon as we hang up here. All right, Mark. Thank you very much, Mark Holdridge from. I was going to say Google, and Daniel Lefebvre. Thank you for coming in, independent guy with a lot of muscles and moves, and of course my dear friend Pete Meile. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks a lot, Wayne, for everything. Thank you, everybody.
You got to come back after you get back from India.
I'll be back.
When's that planned?
February.
Oh, that's a ways away yet.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. You're listening to KYMN Radio, 1080 on your AM dial and 95.1 on your FM dial. Thanks for tuning in to the Wayne Eddy Affair.
And where our playlist goes on for days.